Let's go ahead and get started with prayer. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for Solomon and the life that he lived and the example that he was for us, and the warning that his life has served for many, and that his life and all his observations, the brilliant things that he said, the wisdom you gave him, the foolishness he fell into, Father, let it stand in our own lives as a reminder of what to think, of what not to think, what to do and what not to do. Be with us now, Father, as we try to understand the rest of chapter 1 and all of chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes. Speak through your word to us. Lord, if you have something to say to us through each other, may it be in accordance with your word. And Father, may we find something to apply to our lives. So we invite your Spirit here to convict us where we need conviction, and to guide us into truth, all truth, and away from falsehood, deceit, lies. Let us not believe these things, Father, but let us embrace your truth. And bless this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So we are continuing in Ecclesiastes today, Lord willing. In the next hour, we'll get through the end of chapter 2, which will be fantastic. So, I thought we'd have a nice little warm-up. It's working.
Yeah.
Thought we'd have a nice little warm-up, playing a little game of what is worse. Is it worse to be utterly forgotten, or is it worse to be remembered incorrectly?
Remembered incorrectly.
Okay, why?
Because the last thing to be utterly forgotten, there's no bad that can go with that. You're gone. But to be remembered incorrectly, if there's any bad, that they're saying there's something bad, then your reputation's gone.
Your reputation is completely ruined.
Yeah.
Or exalted, where it should be ruined.
Yeah, one of the two.
Anybody disagree?
Yeah, I do. I think it's better if they remember me.
Well, you think it's...
I don't want to be utterly forgotten, They're talking about you, it's something.
It's positive or negative if you remember.
All publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, would you want to be known as Dan the Apostate? Even though it's not true. It would be tough. I would hate it, personally, if I was remembered in... Like, I had written a science fiction book. I have a trilogy. And I came to a point in my life where I was like, man, I don't want to be remembered for this. And I suspect some of, like J.R.R. Tolkien, in his later life, he really got into theology, and he kind of lamented the fact that he was known more for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. He wanted to be known more for his theological writings. But it was just too late for him. So I suppose he grabbed hold of the One Ring, and it corrupted him.
That is pretty cool.
But then he did let go of it, like Bilbo. No, okay. All right. So here's the question. So in which of the above instances, which is the person truly remembered? What? Speak up. Neither. It's a trick question. Yeah, you're not really remembered. If you're completely forgotten, well, you're not remembered. If you're remembered incorrectly, you're not remembered.
They're not truly remembered.
Yes. I found this to be just fascinating. This picture from the... I'm not sure. It's the Lincoln Memorial?
Yes.
Because the claim is, in this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. Wow! You think he'll be forgotten? He's got his own temple. He lives in the hearts of the people that he saved the Union for. Do you have Abraham Lincoln in your heart this day? Have you been to his temple?
It was on the Confederate side, so no.
Well, yeehaw!
I'm not speaking for my wife. She's on the other side of the Mason Dixon, but strictly on my own.
Do you think he would be happy with this? And how could we even answer it?
I don't think he would be.
Mm-mm.
Because I think, didn't he get saved towards the very, very last one of his life? I mean, I've read.
I don't know. Nobody really knows.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of a skeptic before.
Nobody knows anything about him. Nobody knew anything about him until July 4th of 2005. They finally uncovered the real Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, there he is.
He didn't even have a beard, apparently. No, I find this sort of exercise fascinating, that you've got things said about a man who we're supposed to remember and supposed to revere. All Americans are supposed to. Yet we have temple, we have in their hearts saved. Boy, it's very Christological in nature. And then you have actually we didn't get the real truth until recently. We're going to uncover the real Abe Lincoln, as if everyone in the past has been wrong, but in 2005, thank goodness, the secrets of his political genius, his private struggle with depression, his complicated views on race, and the strange saga of his wife. Man, makes you really want to know Abe Lincoln, right? And then here was the other one, a few years after, President by day, hunter by night, Abraham Lincoln, vampire hunter. Anybody see that? I saw it. It was fiction. But again, it's not the real Lincoln, and this isn't the real Lincoln, and I'd submit to you, this is not the real Lincoln. The poor guy is lost to history. You could read some primary sources about his life, but man, it's so muddled, especially with garbage like this. This is one of my pet peeves. You've heard the primary sources, the historical accounts, but now we're going to give you the real Jesus. Based on what? Based on this awesome show that you're going to...
Some Gnostic gospel we dug up.
Yeah.
It's
Or
always the same thing.
We just wrote a new one, and we found it. Or what? Yeah, Gnostic gospels that were overturned centuries ago. Oh, yeah. And of course, he was killed by John Wilkes Booth. All right, but it's a problem of being remembered correctly. It's very difficult to get at, and so it is, just like Dylan struggled in his readings and preparation to figure out about Solomon and, what did the scholars have to say about Solomon's life, and did Solomon repent of his sins, or did he die in his sins? Which was it? And I couldn't believe all of the scholars that had said that, obviously Ecclesiastes is his work of repentance. Although it is not clear anywhere in Ecclesiastes that this was his work of repentance, I think it is very clear that it is his work, and another's, especially because of the conclusion. But the sources, if you go back and read, you don't find a repentance. But what you do find is a setup in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 16 through 17. It states that the king shall not multiply horses for himself, and he did. Nor shall he cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. He got plenty of horses and chariots from Egypt, since the Lord has said, you shall never return that way again. He shall not multiply wives for himself. Well, maybe it was more exponential than multiplication. So maybe he thought there was a loophole there with 700 wives and 300 concubines. I hate that name, concubine. It sounds like a mechanical. Anyway, so he shall not multiply wives for himself. Why not? Or else his heart will turn away. His heart will, and his heart did turn away. And nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. And he did all of these things. And he didn't repent. The Bible says in 1 Kings 11:4, and the Bible, I think, is going to be a pretty clear source on repentance. It says, for when Solomon was old, he's old. But when he was old, he repented and wrote Ecclesiastes. No, when he was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods. Would love it if you all went home and read that. Just read everything in 1 Kings and in 1st or 2nd Chronicles. Josephus also makes it clear that he did not repent. And he even blames Solomon for all the troubles that overtook the nation. In his Antiquities of the Jews, Book 8, Chapter 7, Section 8, he says, when he was growing into years, he was, I guess he stuttered. Or I typed it up. I didn't copy and paste because I got it off there. He was deluded by women and transgressed the law, concerning which transgressions and the miseries which befell the Hebrews, thereby, I think, proper to discourse at another opportunity. I actually found better quotes than that. He's saying that these sins are cause of the miseries which befell the Hebrews. In fact, he was warned. I mean, we get the story that he's warned by a prophet and says, hey, the kingdom's going to be torn away from your son and given to somebody else. Nevertheless, you'll get a tribe for yourself. So he gets to keep Judah, and he gets Benjamin. And then the other 10 tribes form their own. So here we go. It says here, this is actually in the same book and different chapter, or different section. It says that, nor did he imitate David, that's Solomon, nor did Solomon imitate David, although God had twice appeared to him in his sleep and exhorted him to imitate his father. So he died, Solomon died ingloriously. He suffered an inglorious death. That's according to Josephus. What does he know? Now, he is quite a bit afterwards, but this is a prevailing thought. The Bible doesn't say that he repented. Josephus doesn't say that he repented. The man did not repent. So if we're going to understand the things that we're reading today, then, oh, I love this. These great pictures of Solomon. If we're going to understand what we're going to read today, we need to understand this about Solomon. And I totally buy into what Dylan had said, that, Solomon's going up, 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 up with his wisdom and his understanding, and then he crests and he's going down, 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 down to the grave.
So what does that say about wisdom? Because that's what he asked for, and it didn't work.
Wisdom works. Obedience is also important.
There's something missing there.
He was completely and utterly disobedient. But he was guided by his wisdom during the disobedience. So these are not oft-used Solomon pics. See, and he's got gray hair. Not that there's anything wrong with gray hair.
It's better than no hair.
That's debatable.
Engage. But here we see Solomon with one of his wives, and he's looking at this goddess. And then here he is with three other wives, and here he is bowing down, looking up to this graven image.
Jeremy, the other thing you and I were talking about was so often in Kings, when they go bad, when they come back, the author of Kings is very clear to make sure to note that these guys came back and repented. Of all people, you'd figure if Solomon came back, that author would do the exact same thing for him, with as highly honored as he was amongst the people. But he never writes that down.
Yeah.
He never turns back.
Yeah. And to me, the Bible is the ultimate source that you're going to go to. Going to somebody like Josephus or reading some other histories, I think is also important, because it corroborates what the Bible said. And if it didn't corroborate it, well, then you'd have to, you got to really get into research, right? And you got to compare and contrast. When was this written? What was the purpose of this being written? And what sort of materials did this person have access to? In any case, so Solomon's wisdom, the sins of Solomon did not nullify his mind and wisdom. His wisdom was with him, but his obedience was rather deficient. So I look at that. It's in writing.
Wow.
I agree with Dylan that this
Such a rarity.
It must have been written near the decline, either at the crest, but the things that he contemplates really impact him greatly, I think, to a point where he says, you know what, just forget it. I'm going to go do what I want to do. All right. But the cool thing about all the bad things that Solomon does is he does it. He's got a really kind of scientific approach. And if you would turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, we'll read verses 12 through 15. And we will, actually in the next few sets of verses, you will see kind of the methodology that Solomon is employing. So it's Solomon's scientific method. So we will read verses 12 through 15. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. So we see here three main areas for the purpose of his method, right? He's identifying himself. I'm Solomon. He's king over Israel in Jerusalem, which the point had already been made. You know, once the kingdom splits, you're not going to be king over Israel in Jerusalem unless you come after Solomon. So he identifies himself, and his purpose is to seek and explore all that is done under heaven with his mind. And his conclusion, he gives a conclusion, and there's going to be more clarification here in the next few verses. All that is done is futile. And I was looking at the Greek word in the Septuagint for this word that is translated vanity, and I looked at the Hebrew word as well, and really don't, and tell me your opinion if you agree or not. Don't get suckered into thinking that it's like vain. Look, I'm so vain. I probably think this book is about me, right? It's more like it's futile. It's futile. That sense of the word vanity. Dylan?
Yeah. The Hebrew
that?
word havel has this kind of perception of a breath being given out and just gone. It's completely pointless.
That's it. So don't breathe out.
Yeah.
All right. So the next section is 16 through 18. And Solomon continues, I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I realize that this also is striving after wind, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. So he identified himself, and he also gives a qualification. There's nobody wiser for this task. That's what he says of himself, and that's what we get from the Bible. We get that from also that testimony from the Lord. And his methodology is to employ this mind of his to the task of gaining a comprehensive knowledge of all that is done under heaven, wisdom, madness, and folly. And his conclusion is the same. He's giving us the conclusion up front. He gave us the conclusion up front last week. He's giving us the conclusion again. But I want you to notice with these 12 through 15, these verses, and 16 through 18, these verses, there's a parallel. He's talking about his identification as who he is and his qualification. He's giving what his purpose is and his methodology of deploying his brain, his massive brain the size of a planet, and his wisdom in order to understand what it is that's going on. I mean, really understand it. But the conclusion is it's futile. Everything that people are doing is futile. And even this great wisdom that he has brings pain and sorrow because of this task. I mean, you could say that, boy, he's pessimistic. But you've got to understand Solomon's pain. What a creepy slide. You've got to do you want to?
Yes.
Okay. If you don't, well, you should. Although I don't like it, to be honest. I think he's dead right. And we're going to see why here. All right. Let's understand the futility and pain. Read the following verse. Let's turn to Ecclesiastes 12, 13 through 14. And in fact, let's do this as a group project. Why don't you all break into sections? Here's a good section. And if you two want to join these here, that's a good group. Here's a good group, or maybe y'all could all be a group.
He said this is a good group.
Why do you say a group is good? None are good. No, okay.
He said this is a good group.
All groups of sin that come short.
All groups of sin. So I want you to read Ecclesiastes 12, 13 through 14 and answer this question. What are the only things that really matter in life? And then read 1 Corinthians 3, 10 through 15 and answer these questions. And then we'll have a good discussion about it. All right. Let's have a good discussion about futility and pain, shall we? It's a good discussion. Okay, so the end of Ecclesiastes, right? What are the only things that really matter in life?
Fear God and keep His commandments.
Right. Okay. Anybody get anything different? That's it. Okay. Right. And then for 1 Corinthians 3, 10 through 15, what are you building on the foundation? Well, what's the foundation first?
Jesus.
Jesus is the foundation. That's firm, right?
Classic Sunday school.
Classic, right.
True.
I set you up for that one. So what are you building on that foundation? Anybody want to be brave?
I'm building mostly combustible things.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, if you think about where my time goes.
Okay.
If you were to look at the volume of the structure,
Yes.
it's like mostly combustibles with some non-combustible material in there. You know, so like the stuff with my family and taking in orphans and people that I've reached during my lifetime for the kingdom. And hopefully the kids turn out okay and there's some sort of lasting stuff there.
The problem of the heirs.
Right?
Yes.
But most of what I do is not gonna last.
It's what? Is it futile?
Yeah.
Chasing after the wind.
Well, we're just talking because our house got hit by lightning this week.
Yeah.
So I have all
That's
this
right.
stuff. So I lost a couple of air conditioners, my laundry, and so I'm like, now I'm gonna have to go to work for like another week just to replace. Like basically, I'm just to pay the deductible of this insurance claim is gonna. Right. All I'm doing is like working an entire another week to get back to where I was before lightning smashed and like all of my stuff burned.
Yeah.
Electronically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, and you know what? Even after I replace it, it's still not permanent. It's still even going to have to be replaced again or die or something. So there's a lot of stuff that I spend my time doing just to keep my house below 80 degrees.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. You take that back to up here. Okay. Maybe on a tiny level, you're providing for your family, which is important.
Yeah. But
good.
that's not even why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's fun.
Oh,
Like I go to work because I really like it.
Yeah.
It's vanity, and like I enjoy doing cool stuff, but it's mostly vanity. I would eventually get hungry and do something, but that's not why I'm doing it.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For sharing that. So you all have your own answers for this. Okay? And then this should help you derive an answer, a better answer. If you audit what you do with your time, is going to tell you what you're really doing and if it's building on something or building something combustible or building something that will last. And even then, shoot, what if the thing that you think is going to last was a big waste of time and it was really something combustible or it was even taking you the other way? So, okay, we've got Christ. You can build on Christ. What else could you build on? And then if I say you, I'm assuming that you are a believer. And if you are not a believer, what is your foundation? And what are you building on? And what does it all mean? And what's the real gain?
If you're not a believer,
Yeah.
you're building on sand. That's what Jesus said.
Okay.
You're gaining temporary comfort. Like, I mean, if you work hard and have a lot of money and a lot of things, you can make your life for a while more comfortable and easier.
Yeah.
Below 80 degrees.
Below
For a
80,
while.
sure.
So, yeah, and there's an immediate reward for it,
Okay.
for some things.
And what's the gain, though?
The ultimate gain, of course, is nothing. But
what is the end of that? You reject Christ your whole life, you die. What did-
You gain the whole world and lose your own soul.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Yes. You gain the whole world and yet lose your soul. It's a big deal. I mean, if you really sit here and think about it, all the passion that somebody has, all the struggles and trials that they go through their whole lives, and they sing the song of Sinatra. He probably didn't even write that. I did it my way. Or they sing the song of Sid Vicious. I did it my way. Died at such a young age. And one died at a young age, one died at an old age. Were they believers? I don't know. If they weren't believers, then you did it your way, and it amounted to a terrible end. Futile, painful. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. He looked at this understanding, okay? When you really do, and you start to think about all these little worries and cares and tasks, and what you devote your life to, and I've got to see this show. Got to go play this game, or I've got to do this whatever, right? And it's really just a waste of time, futile, at chasing after the wind. If you reflect on it, if you really reflect on it, I mean just simmer in it, you're going to feel the futility of it and the pain. Gaining the wisdom and understanding of this, it can impact you even when you're out with friends that you know are not believers, and you're laughing and having a great time, and yet there's that voice in your head saying, this is all we got with this person, this is it. I've been praying a long time for this person. I've shared the gospel with them multiple times, yet here we are, laughing, good food, good drinks, good conversation, good whatever. And it's going to end someday. Will it be good? Will it be bad? It's hard to say. But if you let it penetrate you and you really simmer in it, it can really bring you down. And then they can write the real story of you on Time magazine and your struggle with depression because of that one day and two guys in a Bible, and that guy said, futile and pain. The conclusion of the matter, though, is fear God and keep His commandments, because this applies to every person. God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. My foundation is Christ Jesus. If I build on stubble on that foundation, right, I'm going to make it on Christ's merit alone. If my foundation is sinking sand, I'm doomed. There's nothing I can hold up. I can say, well, you didn't tell me. How many times did I tell you? I told you so many times, and you looked at the thing, and you said, it is not so. You looked at creation and said, mistake. Or, and please pray for these great scientists, like Richard Dawkins, who, when he talked to Ben Stein, and Ben said, well, what if you meet God someday? I will say, sir, why did you go to such great lengths to hide yourself? When the evidence is all around. And then the futility of a whole life spent struggling, a pawn of the devil, really. Deceived. At any rate, keep the conclusion in mind all the time. Always keep the conclusion in mind during Solomon's experiments, okay? Because the conclusion has a major impact on the analysis of the data that he brings in, okay? And it helps you to see, because sometimes it's not so clear. He'll say, I did this, I had a great time, but it was futile, okay? It's futile because I did this, I had a great time, it had nothing to do with fearing God and keeping His commandments, and it had nothing to do with good. It had to do with evil. And so therefore it was futile, right? Okay, so let's start the Solomonic experiment. Solomonic, of course, I don't even know if that's a technical term, but it sure sounds like one. The Solomonic experiment. The first experiment is with pleasure. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Let's go. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself. Oh, that'd be like something you hear on a commercial. Enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine, while my mind was guiding me wisely, and how to take hold of folly until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few years of their lives. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water for myself, from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and I even had some homeborn slaves. Also, I possessed flocks and herds larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. Also, I collected for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers, and the pleasures of men, many concubines. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was the reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities, which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. The first experiment is physical pleasure. The constant, though, are the observations, are through the lens of his wisdom. I am going to go do this sinful activity, but I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to be a scientist as I delve into this awful thing, right? Be like a scientist. Maybe I'm going to do experiments on humans that will likely harm them in major ways, but it will be so that I can come to a good conclusion on whatever it is I'm trying to prove. Solomon's going guided by his wisdom, and you look at this little list of the variables that he put into this experiment: comedy, wine, folly, entertainment, sexual pleasure, and various other pleasures, whatever he wanted, right? And then the work pleasure. There's the physical pleasure, which consists of these things and others, and then there's the work pleasure that we love in America. What do? I'm an engineer for oil and gas company. I make a lot of money. I'm a geologist. I'm a whatever. Well, he was a project manager, right? Project management, manual labor.
Manual labor. Subconscious.
Oops. I may know a few. Okay. Construction.
Comes from his other job, his day job.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Keep going.
Oops. Gardening. That doesn't help. Gardening, power / control / management through his slaves, his employees, and the homegrown slaves. Shepherding and money. All right, so these were the experiments: physical pleasure and work pleasure. And then his conclusion, he told us right up front, right? His initial conclusion was that his heart was pleased. His heart was pleased. He did tell us that in 2:10, right? He said that. He said, "All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. My heart was pleased." Let's go to where Elizabeth already went, and let's look at... No. We're going to go there down here. Let's look at Matthew 6, verses 1 through 2. Who would be so bold as to turn to Matthew 6 and read it? Verses 1 through 2.
Be careful not to practice your righteousness, is that the one?
Yes.
In
Oh, you
front
memorized
of
it.
people to be seen by them. Otherwise you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be applauded by the people. I assure you, they got their reward.
To be applauded by the people. You gave to God. I'm building on my foundation. Look at all the money I gave. I gave 50% to the Lord. Woo! Great job! Great job, sir. We're so very proud of you. And he's like, man, they're proud of me. And God's like, you blew it. But that was his reward, right? And that's what Solomon said. And that was his reward, right? His heart was pleased. For my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. His heart was pleased. And what good is it, though, really? To have a pleased heart. I loved how many times he said, I built gardens for myself. I found myself beginning to emphasize it, be drawn in by the whole, for myself, for myself. Be a good song.
Well, it kind of points out, how much he had in resources. Like, he could pursue these things to a level that no one else could.
Mm-hmm. And if your heart's desire is, well, I'd love to be able to get to a point one day where I could do that for myself. Right? And Solomon's saying, I did it. You probably might not want to. You might want to rethink the way that you order your lives. All right, but his final conclusion, he let us know up front in verses 1 through 2. It's futile. And then also in 11. Futile, madness, useless, striving after the wind. Ooh, profitless. Right? And Elizabeth said this earlier. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul? Nothing. If you are the multi-billion-dollar guy who can throw money at presidents and sheikhs and fries, sheikhs or sheiks, sorry, and get them to do whatever you want, right? But you don't care about, you thumb your nose at God and you say, I don't even believe in it. I believe in my money, and I still need more. Right? What's the real profit? If you lose your soul, what's the profit?
Well, long term, there's no profit.
Yeah, long term, it's profitless. And the prophets warned you. Different prophet. All right. Verses 12 through 17. The next, these are some Solomonic observations on wisdom and folly. Verses 12 through 17. So I turn to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fate befalls them both. Then I said to myself, As is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten. And how the wise man and the fool alike die. So I hated life. For the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after wind. He made some good observations, right? The heir will do as those who have done before, okay? And it will be one path or another, the wise path, the mad path, the folly path. But he did say wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness, and that the wise person actually has eyes in their head and can see where they're going. The fool walks in the darkness, runs into something, and then doesn't even understand. Why did I run into something? I didn't even know I was going to run into it, and I'll wait till I run into the next thing, because I can't see where I'm going. Right? And so these are good things to reflect on, but then he said, neither one of them is going to escape death, and they're both forgotten. So what does it even really matter? Why be wise? It's futile. Wisdom is futile, and I hate life, because life equals grief. And everything is futile and striving for the wind, trying to catch the wind. Have you ever caught the wind? Okay. Tell me a question.
You know, in West Texas, you can kind of catch that wind. You know, sometimes it kind of picks you up.
The wind may catch you there.
Yeah, I don't know who's catching who there, but
he's saying the interesting observation about the wise and the fool is they're both going to die. And so what is it to really be gained? And maybe even that the fool doesn't understand that he walks in darkness. Ignorance is strength. And then he started to hit on a problem with the heir. Let's look at chapter 2, verse 18 through 23. It says, thus I hated all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun, for I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor, for which I have labored by acting wisely under the sun. This too is vanity. Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to the one who has not labored with them. This too is vanity and a great evil. For what does a man get in all the labor and in his striving with which he labors under the sun? Because all his days his task is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. The problem of the heir, this is an observation, the problem of the heir, even if you're wise and you do everything right, you've got to hand it over to an unknown actor. And he may be wise, he or she may be wise or a fool. And you built up this great empire, and your stupid son blew the whole thing in a matter of weeks. Right? Or you spent your whole life building this amazing house, and then your daughter, who is old enough to know better, is playing with fire, burns it down. Right? So the heir is going to have control over your accomplishments. And if your heir is a fool, then your accomplishments were in vain. They're not lasting. It's like, oh, look at the kingdom that you ruined.
but this kind of happened there.
That's precisely what happened. Right? Let's go there. I told you to go back and read 1 Kings. We will go there now. 1 Kings 11, starting in verse 43. First Kings 11 is where you were first informed that Solomon blew it. All right, verse 43. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of his father David, and his son Rehoboam reigned in his place. Then Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. Now when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, he was living in Egypt, for he was yet in Egypt where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon. Jeroboam is the one that's going to become king in the north. God promised him. And Solomon knew that God promised him. And Solomon acted a lot like Saul and tried to kill Jeroboam. Wanted him dead. Then they sent and called him, Jeroboam that is, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke hard. Now, therefore, lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and we will serve you. Then he, that is Rehoboam, said to them, Depart for 3 days, then return to me. So the people departed. King Rehoboam consulted with the elders who had served his father Solomon while he was still alive, saying, How do you counsel me to answer these people? Then they spoke to him, saying, If you will be a servant to this people today, and will serve them and grant them their petition, and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the elders which they had given him, and consulted with the young men who grew up with him and served him. So he said to them, What counsel do you give, that we may answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Lighten the yoke which your father put on us? And the young men who grew up with him spoke to him, saying, I love it, the young men who grew up with him spoke to him, saying, Thus you shall say to the people who spoke to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, now you make it lighter for us. But you shall speak to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's loins. Whereas my father loaded you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. And then Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the 3rd day, as the king had directed, saying, Return to me on the 3rd day. The king answered the people harshly, for he forsook the advice of the elders which they had given him, and he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of events from the Lord, that he might establish his word, which the Lord spoke through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel! Now look after your own house, David. So Israel departed to their tents. But as for the sons of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the forced labor, and all Israel stoned him. He's like, I don't care that they left. I'm gonna make sure they do what I tell them to do. But his guy got stoned to death. And King Rehoboam made haste to mount his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. Run away. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. I'm sorry, Solomon. Your fear came true. So, what do you think about this? Solomon already made the observation, right? He should have known better. Why was Rehoboam such a bonehead? Especially if Solomon repented.
To fulfill God's word.
Okay, that's the great answer. Yeah.
It's like a stubborn Pharaoh.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. And you know, even if you've been a really nice guy, something still would have happened.
Sure.
You know.
But it was set in motion long ago. We got that phrase in there, right? He asked his friends that he grew up with, who raised this young man, Rehoboam? You think Solomon did?
Well, that's a good question.
The pagan wives.
Yeah.
Huh?
The pagan wives maybe raised someone.
Maybe the pagan wives.
It's October 14th. It's your day, Rehoboam. Spend some time with your dad.
Maybe we
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Bring your kid to work day.
He shows up with his giant herd. I don't even know half their names. I don't even know half of their name. All right, but we get in Proverbs that if you raise a child in the way they should go in their old age, they will not depart from it. Train a child. Rehoboam was not trained in the way, or no, he was, I'm sorry. He was trained in the way that he should go. But he was not trained in the right way. All this wisdom that Solomon had did not transfer to Rehoboam. All this, oh no, what if the guy that comes after me is a moron? Well, didn't you see the problem that you had when you were to take the throne? David had to establish you on the throne rather than your brother. You should have known. You got to have a path forward on who's going to take your shoes.
But the slaves and the gardens and the flocks and all that probably looked pretty good.
That's true.
To the kid, so he's probably like, hey, if forced labor leads to this, how about more forced labor?
Yeah, more forced labor.
It's working out really well.
He's running on the more forced labor ticket.
Yeah. That's true. He's looking at this going, this is a pretty nice life. I'm going to keep it up.
Yeah.
Be harder than my dad was, and I'll get better stuff, and yeah.
Harder than my dad was.
Yeah.
I submit to you that he was not trained in the proper manner. He was not trained in wisdom. I mean, you read Proverbs, it's always right. He's writing it to my son. My son, do not do these things, right? My son, beware the wayward. My son, you cannot scoop hot coals into your lap and not get burned, right? And all this stuff he wrote things down to his son, right?
I think another point that goes well with what he's saying in Ecclesiastes regarding this point in Proverbs is, even if you do all the things right in training your child, there's no guarantee that he's not going to be a complete foul up by the time he becomes an adult. You can do everything right, but that doesn't mean that it's going to come out okay. And I think that's the point Solomon's trying to make too. You do all these things, build up all this stuff,
Right.
and son takes over. No matter how well you've trained him, it's basically a crapshoot as to whether or not he's going to.
Because look at Solomon.
Yeah.
Look at Solomon's life. I mean, David handed him a great, and I love what Josephus said. He had the best example he could ever get. And Solomon started out well, and God even appeared to him 2 times, and then he blew it. He blew it. And then Rehoboam blew it even more. Right? Oh, yeah. Rehoboam gets the Dope Award for the dunce cap of splitting Israel and Judah. All right, last bit, the enjoyment of labor. Verse 24, there is nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen that it is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while the sinner he has given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. This, too, is vanity and a striving after the wind. He makes some good observations here. Nourishment is from God. You can't have it without God. Enjoyment of labor is from God. Shane, you enjoy what you do? That's from God. Wisdom, knowledge, and joy come to those that God considers to be good. But the one that is not good, they're given this futile task of gathering things up their whole life that's just going to come to ruin, eternally speaking. And those who are in the Lord, eternally speaking, are going to come to a great reward. Okay? And so all and this too is vanity, futile. The problem is that we've got to figure out how to lessen the amount of futile tasks we do, but they're so it's such a persuasive thing to get involved in futile tasks. You've got to remember there are many things that can't be fixed, right? Now you're not going. If we could only have the president, whoever it is, it's in your mind, or maybe it's the current president, things would be better. No, it's never going to be better. That's not the solution. The solution is the conclusion that we've already seen, right? Fear God and keep His commandments, because this applies to every person. God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. Always keep that in mind as we go through Ecclesiastes, and you'll understand why he comes to this conclusion that it's futile. Because so much of what we do is futile. But don't use that sorrow that you get from gaining this wisdom, don't use that sorrow as an excuse to say, well, forget it. I'm going to go get 700 wives and 300 concubines. That sounds like a fun thing. And some male and female slaves and male and female singers. Right? That's not the solution. No, the solution is to fear God and keep His commandments. You live in the grace as a Christian. You have the foundation of Jesus. And you have a choice to build on it. With something combustible or something that will last. Just keep it in mind. And don't forget your friends that are lost. And the exceeding futility of what they're doing and the path that they're on. Man, they need the gospel. Because that's the only thing that matters. I mean, having a good time is fun. Going to a movie and hanging out with those lost people, it's fun. You can laugh and joke around and have a real connection there. But if their end is so dark, take the time to share the light with them. That is not futile. That is not a chasing after them. Share Christ. See people come to know the Lord. That will last. That is not futile. A lot of the things we do are, but that is not. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the wisdom that you've given to everyone here, to the amount of wisdom they have. Add to it, Lord, and in the sorrow that comes from that wisdom, I ask that you would lift our spirits and not let us be saddened to the point where we don't want to do anything good about it, but that we would highlight in our lives the things that are not futile and not chasing after the wind. And the things that we are doing that are futile and chasing after the wind, that you would convict us of and point out to us. And then, Lord, help us to encourage one another, especially if we see it in each other, the things that we ought not be doing that are futile. Lord, we want to live for your glory. We want to bring your name to our lost friends. And we want to encourage our brothers and sisters in Christ to do those things that will last. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Any questions or thoughts? Final parting?
Everything's already been said.
That's awesome. I can't do better than that.